Think forward. In this episode of the Omega podcast, we have the owner and operator of T.R.U.E Medical Billing. Covered in this podcast is the implementation of privacy, security, and remaining compliant with HIPAA standards. Digitized for excellence.
Welcome to the Omega Expert Chat with Colton. Colton, it's so great to have you on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very thankful to be here and have this opportunity to speak with you, Keenan, and we can talk shop about some medical billing.
Yeah, I know there's a lot to discuss pertaining to your new venture, starting T.R.U.E Medical Billing. And I know for many of our listeners, they're probably wondering, what is T.R.U.E Medical Billing? So in a nutshell, can you share with our listeners what is T.R.U.E Medical Billing and perhaps share a bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, my name is Colton Berger. And where do I even start with something like this? Oh, it's such an honor. But I am the co-owner of T.R.U.E Medical Billing. That is essentially, we are a medical billing business. But what does that mean? That means that we are the outsourced services for doctors' offices to submit their claims. So when you as a patient go see the doctor and you're seeing them with your insurance to pay for that visit, the doctor then submits a claim from your visit. So it has all the information from your visit and they submit that to the insurance company. So instead of the doctor's office doing that, we do that. And there's various reasons why they might decide to have those services outsourced. But then, so we send the claim out and then send the money. The money goes directly that they're getting. That's how the doctors make money, is through the insurance claims into their office. So that's what we do. A little bit about myself. I am a husband. I'm a father. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. I am I'm living a happy, wonderful life. I'm 30 years old. I'm a graduate of the Military College of South Carolina, the Citadel. And I have a fun journey that I went on. I was actually originally going through the prospect and the journey of joining medical school, being a physician myself. I spent hundreds of hours in doctors' offices shadowing operations and being within patients and interacting with patients and things. So that really laid the foundation for what then later became T.R.U.E Medical Billing. And that's how I started getting the ideas turning. But I left that goal behind when I was about 24. And I decided to become a professor for a little while. And I taught for about 2 years. And then I spent the following about 5 years doing sales. And so within a quarter, and now I'm an owner of a medical billing business. So it's been a cool little journey, and I've learned a lot along the way.
That's fantastic. And I love how you shared about being a co-owner with Joshua, who is
Yep.
also the owner of the business. I know many times when people are interested in starting new ventures, they often have to figure out whether they're going to do it as a sole proprietorship or perhaps doing it as a partnership. When you were starting your venture, did that ever come to mind as an option? How did you sort of reach that conclusion to do it with a partner?
Yeah. So it's really just how fate decided it. It was a matter of, I met Joshua. I had this idea in my head of, it was there's got to be ways that doctors can get paid out on their services better, because it's becoming a problem where a lot of practices, especially smaller practices, they're actually going under because they're not able to recognize enough revenue to keep their practice afloat, especially with the cost like inflation going up. It's becoming more and more prominent now. So I already had this, and I've gained a lot of this information because of all the time that I was spending in doctors' offices and even within hospitals, because some of the doctors within hospitals, they might own a practice as well, but then they also can work in the hospital. And having these conversations, and it stuck with me, and I'm like, this is something that needs to be done. And then I happened to meet Joshua, who's like, hey, I have this idea of this medical billing thing. I'm like, no way. Like, that's something that I figured out was a problem like 10 years ago. And I've just been kind of trying to figure out how to break into it. He's like, well, yeah, you want to do it together? Sure, sure. And it just so happened that the company that I was with prior, it was a big corporate organization. They did big layoffs. So I was like, dude, this is perfect. Like it had just been a week prior to that, I had gotten laid off. And then I was like looking and trying to develop certain ideas and how to do things and what's next. And I had this conversation with this guy that was a friend of mine, had no intention of it being a business conversation. And I was like, wow, it's like, it was just destined in this way. It was cool. That was a long-winded answer saying it also seemed like the best decision at the time because my partner Joshua, I don't have any experience in building businesses. I took more of like the traditional route of I'm going to go to college and then I decided to get a postgraduate degree and then I decided to just like keep going and get into like a W-2 job and that kind of thing. Joshua took the route of just entrepreneur from the start. And we're the same age, but I would say his business know-how and savviness is so far beyond mine because he's been a business owner and pursuing that for like 12 years now, which is pretty cool to say. So he has a lot of experience that I can glean from. So we both kind of bring things to the table.
That's awesome. It's almost as if you both have these new strengths, someone has weaknesses, and you guys can be able to come together to be able to work with each other, sharpening one another to be able to develop such a
Mhm.
great organization. I know you had
Yes.
mentioned in your recent response about how throughout the process of finding a partner that you recognized that you weren't sure, right? You had mentioned that at your recent organization there were layoffs, and I think across the whole tech industry there was a lot of tech companies
Mm.
experiencing a lot of layoffs, and I think we know what does that do to. But mainly, there's a lot of fear and doubt that creeps into people's minds, especially in that specific area. When you were making that transition from corporate to being an entrepreneur, did you experience that? And if so, can you sort of speak to our listeners about how you went from perhaps being doubtful into a season of having the confidence to just step out in faith or step out in confidence, knowing that regardless of what's ahead of you, it's going to benefit you and your professional growth?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's a great question as well. And I think it's like a common fear, right? But it's the American dream of I want to own a business and I want to be my own boss and all this. And there's a lot of romance to it. Of like, oh, it sounds so wonderful. You know, like you're a business owner and it's like, it's hard. There's a lot of work that goes into it. And there is this point of fear of how can I leave my steady paycheck to then go pursue what I want to do. And for me, I think it's two things. Number one, it's faith. It's like my faith in God. And that definitely, even in bad times before that, I've been like, you know what, whatever happens, it's gonna be okay. You know, I'm like, worst case scenario ever, I'm like, at least I go get to meet my Heavenly Father again. And that's okay with me. But I know that no matter what, I'm going to be okay. And I have a family. Like I just had a baby girl. I had a baby girl like 4 weeks before I got laid off. I was still on my paternity leave and they're like, see ya. And I'm thinking, oh man, like I had that moment of what the heck? What is this? But it quickly passed. And a lot of that's due to my faith. And then secondly, it was, I think just due to, I don't know how to say it. I feel like I'm pretty tenacious and I'm like, you know what? This is not going to defeat me. This is just a stepping stone and that's okay. I've learned a ton over the past 5 years of sales and I'm going to continue. And sales is not easy, especially I did a period of door-to-door sales. That really teaches you tenacity. And I'm like, you know what? This is just going to be another thing. And then it just so happened like a week later, I met up with Joshua and the opportunity presented itself. So a lot of it, to recap, was kind of just like my faith and then I guess just belief in myself as well. It's like at the end of the day, me and God, we're going to make it happen.
That's so cool. And I think it's so awesome how you're able to infuse your faith with kind of a medical or very sensitive practice. And I think for many people, when they think of science and faith, they often separate the two. But I think for you being a co owner and you're going to doctors and physicians with your practice, it's almost as if that you're able to infuse your faith. And I think for many entrepreneurs that have faith or believe in God, many of them are hesitant to do so because of, shame or whatever the case may be in their instances. But I think it's so powerful that you can embrace it and that you can bring that as part of your brand, even to your clients, to your constituents. When it comes to the medical professional, how do you sort of provide trust? Because many times when it comes to being with medical professionals or physicians, they have a difficult times trusting people that perhaps might be outside of their network. How do you instill trust? Because we're very much assured that HIPAA compliance is part of it, but then there's also other compliance procedures that need to go into medical billing in order to ensure that a physician is going to work with you guys. How have you been able to align that and to make sure that that's part of your practice when you are pitching or maybe even presenting to doctors?
Sure. Yeah, it's also a great question. Like when it comes down to like HIPAA compliance, that's something that's on the minds, or at least should be on the minds of all physicians, owners, everybody within the business. Because if you get audited and you're not prepared for that, that can cost you like hundreds of thousands of dollars. If it's something it's similar with like the IRS, right? If like you file your taxes, but something's improper about that, and the IRS audits you, there can be major fines for that. So it's similar with that within the HIPAA space. So some of the things that we do are, number one, using certain software when it comes to handling sensitive information. So even down to like emails that may be occurring, right? So we use more like HIPAA compliant communicative software, or if we're getting documentation from them. So it might be their information for doing a bank transfer, right? So then we know how their accounts to get in their money from the clearinghouses, or I'm getting a little ahead of myself, within the insurance companies to the clearinghouses to the actual offices. And so we're keeping this safe for them. And I think a lot of it comes with just building, like on the trust factor, it's just relationship building. And I think a lot of it is authenticity. When it comes in that way, it's like, it can actually be deceptively easy to fall into this kind of like salesy type of role and like pitching people. I think a lot of that has to do with the way like people think sales should be. It's like, oh, this is what you do. It's like you tell them about the product and this, and these are the services we offer. And then it's like, what do you think? How's that sound? And that's really not the way that it should be conducted. Like when it comes down to partnering with somebody that's going to utilize your services, you need to be very transparent with them. It's like, hey, this is where we are. This is what we do. This is what we're going to do for you. This is what you can expect out of us. And then the most important part in all of that is that then you deliver on what you're saying, because they're going to have a certain amount of trust for you in the beginning that they just get from like your words. But then when you actually are performing the services and you're delivering on your actions, that's going to cement that trust. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things is actually you do what you say you're going to do.
Exhilarated by the new level of opportunities this podcast presents? Leave us a comment. Let's get back to this eye-opening conversation.
Or
Yeah.
client.
Trust, transparency, and I love this last third one, verify, right? Trust,
Yeah.
transparency, and also verify that whoever you're working with is actually who they say they are. And it's so crucial, especially in your field. But just to sort of pair it to one of my recent questions, doctors and medical professionals typically work long shifts of 12 hours a day or more. How does medical billing solutions, or the medical billing solution that your organization provides, relieves the risk management of the medical professional's back office?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because there's different ways, because each doctor's office is different. And really what we're doing, it's not like necessary. A lot of the services aren't necessary, but our goal is to try to increase the business's revenue. At a minimum, we want the revenue that we collect to offset what we charge. And so to illustrate that a bit better, when you basically the problems that are occurring, to answer the question, is that a lot of doctors' offices billing staff, so they have individuals that are doing the billing for them. And by billing, that's just basically what we do. But a lot of times the doctor's staff, the billing staff, are handling multiple responsibilities at once. And billing is a very detail-oriented process. And if you're off by a single number, a single letter in coding, or if you submitted something incorrectly, that claim is going to get kicked back to you, and you're not getting paid out on that claim. The insurance company will tell you, hey, X, Y, and Z needs to be remedied within this claim. But then what'll happen a lot of times is just because you get that claim kicked back doesn't mean that you have the time to fix it and then resubmit it. Because during that time, you've had all these other patients coming down the pipeline. So you've got all this other stuff to get to, not just billing claims that you're trying to submit for the new patients that have come in, but usually they have a lot of other responsibilities, like working the front desk, taking calls, following up with patients. Even if it goes into like claims collections, like they'll try to get that before turning it over to an actual collection services. And it's a lot. So what we are remedying is that problem of like, hey, our billers only do billing. They're only doing billing and they're focusing on your billing for you. And then we're getting billers that are specifically trained in your specialties. So if you're a podiatrist or if you're an endocrinologist or a cardiologist, we are trying to find billers that have had experience within those medical spaces, because coding varies for different diagnoses on that. So we're trying to relieve them of that burden. However, some doctors' offices, they have a fantastic billing staff, and they're getting something like, at least if they're getting at least like 70% of their claims accepted, then I'd say you really don't need our services. Unfortunately, that's not typically the case. Typically, it's something like we've seen it where it's upwards of 40% of these doctors off, or 40% of the claims that have been submitted are then getting rejected and not paid out. So that's like, hey, you're going to get paid $100,000 for your salary, right? Oops, sorry. At the end of the year, we decided that you're only getting $60,000 because of this, this, and this. And I'm like, that's not right. So we try to take that role of the office staff billing, which can make them more revenue because we're getting the claims accepted at a higher rate, but we're also relieving them of, in a lot of cases, they don't need their medical billing staff anymore. And each medical biller can cost between $40,000 to $50,000 each. So if you have 3 medical billers, you might be spending $150,000 a year just in paying your employees. And that doesn't include like, your employment taxes and everything else, your payroll taxes and such. We might just charge what it costs for one of those billers. And more than likely, we're going to get it done more efficiently and effectively than all 3.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I think you guys really know your stuff to be able to go into these offices and to be able to really understand the client's needs and how you can provide the services that you do in order to ensure that it's going to meet their needs, but also to relieve the stress and the burdens of some doctors that they face on a day-to-day basis. I guess the last question that I have for you, Colton, is what advice would you give your younger self? I know now, as a father, as an entrepreneur, having have worked for a, Fortune 500 company, Fortune 1000 companies, many people don't see the hard work that goes into it. But if you can look back to when you first started your career, what advice would you give yourself?
I think it would be like, you don't have to follow the narrative of what kind of like society is saying and what like the mainstream is saying. I think if I could go back, I would have thought for myself a little more in those ways and been like, hey, like college is fantastic, but it's better applied when you're ready for it and you're wanting it. Because when I was 18 years old, I was just going to college because that's what I thought you were supposed to do. But I mean, I remember my first year in college, I had like a 2.4 GPA. You know, I'm not doing well. I'm just goofing off. And I was in a military school. So like all you can do is just like go to class, go work out and eat food and then do your military duties. So it's not like I'm going to parties and all these things, but I still found ways to not do school because at the end of the day, I really didn't want to be there. And so I think if I could have paved my own journey a little bit differently and maybe had just gone out and gained more experience, which school does give you a lot of great experience. And there's that argument as well. But I think going out and getting more experience that's a bit more applicable and then going and doing school, if that's what I wanted to do, I think that's what I would tell myself. Like, hey, that's not what you have to do, but it's okay to make that decision. And it's not like you're letting anybody down. You're not disappointing somebody. Because at the end of the day, the only person, and it's the cheesy saying, is like the only person that matters that's proud of you is you. So like, are you doing okay? Because I remember during my mid-20s, like I'm like 24, 25, and I'm like really enjoying my job as a professor. And I'm like, this is great, but I'm making nothing for money. And I'm like, all right, well, I have the one part of I really love my job, but I'm really struggling just to make ends meet. And is there something where I could find a better balance? And I think I would have, if I could go back, I would push myself to have something that found a little bit of a better balance from the beginning.
That's fantastic advice. And thank you so much for sharing that, Colton. And also, thank you so much for being on the Omega podcast. You have been such a fantastic guest.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Keenan. I do appreciate it.